Okay, this is Coffee and Trauma. I'm Shell. This is my husband. If he wants to give his name, he can.
I'm Charles.
This is kind of my raw, uncut video series on foster care, trauma, adoption, everything in between. Uh, no makeup, hair a mess, my coffee, his coffee. It's going to be mainly raw, unedited. I'm not interested in making it all fancy for everybody. I want to be as raw and vulnerable as I can. Uh, my husband's going to be asking me questions about foster care. We're going to go through my journey. Then I hope we get questions and comments and I can answer them for you all. We want to cover things that need to change, need to get better, things that were good about foster care, good experiences, positive, negative, everything in between. That's why this is called Coffee and Trauma. Talk about home lives and everything, just so we could possibly help even a few people that are currently in foster care, that were in foster care, that still struggle with trauma and everything. So we're going to go ahead and start. Do you have a question for me that you want to cover?
The first best place to start is with your story, your everything that.
Well, I don't have very many memories of when I was young, but up until about 12 years old, I started getting more memories. But I do have the memory. I was 5 years old. I was in kindergarten. DHS showed up and they said I needed to go with them, and they didn't explain what was going on or where I was going. They just said I needed to come with them, and I never got to go back home for a while after that. They took me to DHS office, and this all happened in Nebraska, by the way. I won't say the town. I won't use real names of people. But the caseworker sat me on a wooden bench in an area where it was a waiting room area, and told me she'd be back about an hour or so later, is my guess. She comes back and she kneels in front of me and she goes, "It's time to grow up. You've got to grow up. This is what's happening." And she told me I wasn't able to go back home. And at the time, we had 2 dogs, and I remember being so upset that I wouldn't get to say goodbye to my dogs or my grandma. I didn't know if my brother was going with me. I didn't see him until we got to that first foster home. And that first foster home, there were a lot of good things about it. We had an apple orchard, we had a dairy farm. They had some other kids. Can't remember if they were foster kids or biological kids, but there was quite a few kids. Her dad, elderly dad, lived with us. I don't even remember their names. I was too little. But I wet the bed from really young till I was 14, and I remember getting in trouble for that there. I would get in really big trouble for wetting the bed. And we ended up, my brother was there with me. We ended up getting reconnected. A different worker brought him. And was there for I don't know how long. I remember, though, that it was in 1992 because my teacher was obsessed with the presidential elections. And so we had to watch like the swearing in of Bill Clinton. I remember she was huge into Clinton, and she was so excited and made us like go to a different room down the hall and watch like his inauguration thing or something. I remember watching something about it. That's the only way I knew it was like in 92, I think. And things went okay. I mean, it weren't always terrible. I don't have a lot of memories. I just remembered that we ended up not being able to stay there because their son was cooking methamphetamines in the dairy barn. And that's the first foster home is, you know, I didn't know. I was little. I had no clue what was going on. The guy was, I don't know how old, but upper teenagers, maybe early 20s, I'm guessing. Somewhere around there. And so we never hung out with him. We never really saw him much. He stuck to himself or did his own thing. But as a 5-year-old, we didn't understand why we had just gotten comfortable in a home and were suddenly taken away again. I was still trying to process being taken away from my main home. And I won't say that my home was great. It was bad. I just didn't realize until I was older that that wasn't normal.
Basically, when they took you away, that was the only life you knew.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, later on, I had realized that friends' parents had fed me and clothed me, and I thought it was just what people did is share food or feed, have people over for dinner all the time and give hand-me-down clothes because that's all I'd had was used or hand-me-downs. Thought cockroaches were normal. I thought that, my mom having people over day and night was normal. Thought my grandma relieving herself in an ice cream bucket was normal. I thought everybody's older grandparents who couldn't use the restroom and were in wheelchairs, that's what they did. I never saw anything else. I wasn't exposed to that. The people that my mom hung out with ended up getting their kids taken away too. My best friend Kevin, he was taken away too at a really young age for the same things. So yeah.
Now, one of the things I did want to ask, a couple times you told me about the houses that you lived in when you had to move.
Mm-hmm.
That you were given less than 5 minutes to pack up anything and everything you brought with you. Was that every time?
Pretty much, every time, but some foster homes I'd get a notice that they were moving me soon or I was going to be moved, but usually no, you gotta maybe a day's notice, hours notice, or sometimes they'd show up and you wouldn't even know you're leaving. I will say the first one, because I was so little, I had no clue. I didn't know we were leaving. I had no idea. My brother, he was only 3 years older than me, so I don't think he really knew either what was going on with anything. So,
and you said you'd get returned home.
Sometimes. That time, if I remember it, we did not get returned home. We got taken to that second foster home I told you about. And that second foster home I was there for quite a while, if I remember right, because I have a lot of memories from there. My foster grandparents lived close. I was close to them. I was close to the foster mom and dad. I was close. I had a really close foster sister. The only name that I will give out, because I would love to find her and make sure she's okay. I don't know her last name, but she was a foster kid in the early 90s in Nebraska, and her name was Robin. And she would remember maybe a playhouse that was red with our names on the side of it by the doorpost that our foster dad made for us with a little play stove in it and a loft and a table and chairs, and we played in there all the time. My brother and I were together up until in foster care up until I was 12. And then we got separated, but that's later in the series. But that foster home, I have a ton of good memories. We had cows and chickens and goats, and the neighbors were cool. We played with the neighbor kids. The parents were cool. And we had to leave there because they were a blended family, and one of their one of the husband's kids had a relationship and slept with one of the wife's kids. So step siblings had an intimate relationship, and so we had to leave there. But we knew about that one, that we were leaving, because we saw the affair happen, and at that point, like, we knew we were leaving. They were good about telling us that we were going to be going. So I had more time to prep for that one. And after that, I did return home for a while.
And every time they came to get you, did they ever get you at home?
Not usually. I don't remember. Honestly, I don't think at any point did they get me from home. It was always from school and middle of the day or in the morning, and I'd get called to the office and they would take me from school, and I wouldn't know if my brother was being taken. I wouldn't know what's going on with my family. I wouldn't know anything until I got to the DHS office.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't see my mom until court, and they arranged visitation. And even then, it was like once a week for an hour or two.
No. And that's where I guess I would need to find understanding. There were good times, you said.
Yeah.
And there were bad foster houses.
Yeah.
Like, a number of times it seems like they more or less took you in to be a servant.
Yeah. I had a few where it seemed like I was treated quite a few of them I was treated less than their bio children, especially if they had biological children, which 90% of them, 99% of them do. But I would be treated different, and I would be like not have the same privileges, rights as they did. A big part of that'll come later in the series with adoption. And it was hard. There, because you expect a family and you don't get one. They say, "Oh, we're your foster parents." Well, a little kid's gonna think parents, they're good, and they're not. Like, they'll pretend for a while. It's like things were always good in the beginnings, and then something would flip, and it got to the point the older I got that I just gave up. So I would act out on purpose, because what's the point of trying to be good and trying to have a family when I could just be alone and be by myself?
And things I didn't know about foster care, like respite foster homes.
Respite foster homes are foster homes that families can send you when they're tired of you, or they need a break, or they want to go on a really nice vacation without you. And they can send you to another foster home to basically watch you while they live their life for a short period of time. And I was sent a few times to respite. Had a family go on a vacation down to Branson, Missouri. And all they would have had to do was ask the Nebraska foster, like my foster care worker, can we take her to Branson with us? And usually 9 times out of 10, like, sure. I was a little kid. I was like 10. And they said, like, they decided not to. And because I know they could have taken me out of state, honestly, because there is a foster family that I was with that the grandparents moved up to Minnesota. We all went with them to help them move, and we went to the Mall of America. That's where I got my ears pierced, was the Mall of America. And then I stayed up in Minnesota for a month, just me with my foster grandparents, and the state approved it for a month, so it wouldn't have been hard for a week to have me go to Branson, Missouri. Or if they wanted to go to Martha's Vineyard, or they wanted to take some cool vacation to Arizona. No. That was the farthest I had traveled. Like, besides when I was born in Texas and my mom took me to California and then Nebraska. That's the only time I had traveled until I moved to Oregon when I was like 16.
When you were adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next 2 or 3 questions are going to.
And sorry in advance for my bird, my dogs, my cats.
It goes without saying, you didn't do anything wrong to end up in foster care.
No.
So.
But as a kid, you think you're doing everything wrong because you're the one being punished. Because I didn't see any punishments my mom got being in foster care. I just saw how I was treated and pushed around and given to multiple people and said, oh, I wasn't good enough.
And not trying to compare, but juvenile hall, you told me about a group home that you went to. Juvenile hall isn't even that level of strict, yet you were treated like worse than juvenile offenders.
Juvenile hall was a vacation and a break for me. When I ran away from the group home with 2 other girls in 8th grade, that was a break. I loved juvenile hall. It was structured and they treated everybody equally. So to me, that was a vacation.
And the group home you were sent to?
The group home I was sent to was a group home in Nebraska. There were 2 of them. Ours was ran by Grandpa, an older gentleman. And it was all middle schoolers and younger. Mainly just middle schoolers. The other group home was ran by Grandma, his wife. And it was all high school girls. The group home, I didn't mind so much. I think I ran away it was something to do. I wanted more freedom, and these 2 girls just said that, hey, if we get out, we can go have fun and do a lot of stuff. And, I will say that the group home gave us cigarettes as 8th graders in a van on the way to school every day. We were allowed to smoke. We had a 6-foot tall privacy fence around the whole complex, built a house, and I had a pull-in driveway and a garage. We were allowed to smoke outside. The staff would give us cigarettes. Grandpa would give us cigarettes every morning and tell us we could go across from the school to the park and hide by the bathrooms and smoke a cigarette.
No.
And that's a regular group home. I don't know if it still exists, but
that may not be the facility in Sioux City.
The facility I was sent in Sioux City
was foster care too, or
no. Well, it was the foster system sent me to it. They couldn't find anybody to take me. And so They sent me to a facility I will say the facility is located in Sioux City. Um, it was the Sioux City, Nebraska part of Sioux City. Um, and it's a lockdown facility. You have to ask to enter and exit every room. You had to ask to sit and stand. You did school there. We didn't go outside. You had to earn that privilege. No outside whatsoever. No sunlight. You're locked down. You're in the building. There's no outside time. You have to get up in levels. I think it was a level 3, and by doing chores and your schoolwork and minding and blah blah blah, to get up to like level 3 to have an outing with them. Which right before I got out, I managed to be able to have one outing, but I was sick with the flu, and I told them I was sick, and they're like, "Well, you have to go anyway." And I got really really sick outside, and so I got to go back in and lay like in my room. I was sick. Um, for Christmas we got socks and shampoo. Um, that was it. So I didn't see sunlight for a while. Like, yeah, you did not go outside. Kids were not allowed to go outside, and those types of facilities are wrong. To me, because sunlight's necessary. I don't care how bad the kid is. Juvenile hall, we got to go outside in a caged in area for part of the day. This place does not allow you to go out.
You're treated worse than somebody who has broken the law.
Yeah. And some of these kids, yes, they did break the law, but most of us are just transient foster kids. Like, you couldn't leave, like, it didn't matter if it was an open doorway, like, from the living room area to the kitchen area. It's an open doorway, like most kitchens are. You still had to ask to enter and exit that room. You had, before you sat down in a chair, you had to ask to sit or stand. And if you didn't, they'd make you stand for an hour. You were treated less than.
And that seemed to be with this, what you've told me. With what you've told me about foster care, that seems to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Not
Being
only
treated less than. And that's why I wanted to make this series, is because I don't think people realize, for all these good foster parents that are on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook or whatever, or people they know from church or school or whatever, there are bad ones, and it's unregulated. I've had to report foster parents to DHS for behaviors. Like, the next episode of this next week, I will get into the basically cult Christian people. Like, I'm not against Christianity. You know that. I was raised in Christianity. This was a fundamentalist Christian cult that I had to report to DHS, and once they found out what was going on, I was immediately moved. Like, there was no, oh, well, we'll look into it. They realized they screwed up, because I had witnesses. I had people willing to speak on my behalf, and this was in 7th grade. You met my former pastor.
Yeah. And that was what I was going to bring up, that it doesn't seem that they may have vetted everybody in the system.
To be a foster parent, you have to take classes. Go through these classes. They do a background check. And that's it. Like, pretty much. It's so easy. And then when a kid goes into a foster home, that foster parent gets money to buy that kid clothes. If they have nothing, they get a voucher for, like, basically clothing and shoes and personal items they need, shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, etc. They also get paid every month to care for that kid. 90% of my foster homes, I got the bare minimum. I don't know what was done with that money, because I didn't see any benefits. I mean, yes, they bought food, but I also worked for that food. I worked for the right to go out and do fun stuff. I had jobs paying for stuff. And I know for a fact that one foster home, um, it bugged me because they wouldn't shop at Walmart or Target. Their appearance was everything, and it was J.C. Penney's, Yonkers, Macy's. We had to have our hair dyed, like highlighted. We had to get our nails done. We had to tan. Like I wasn't allowed to like pick my like where I wanted to shop, what I wanted to look like. I had to be like their clones, and I didn't like it because it took away my individuality. And that I worked hard for them too. At $2 an hour, they paid me $2 an hour to work in their vineyard because they owned the property and I was their foster daughter. So $2 an hour.
Yeah.
They also had a Guatemalan immigrant working for them for pennies, pretty much, that they homed. But then their daughter didn't like that me and him became friends because I was teaching him English through the lady had gotten hooked on phonics, and I was teaching him English, helping him learn. And this is my freshman year, and the only thing, this guy, and you can ask my best friend, who I hope to have on the series sometime, by the way, you can ask her, this guy wouldn't touch a fly. He was a hard worker. He worked for my foster dad and stuff at his company, and he worked on a ranch. And she claims that he touched her, but in order to, I was a light sleeper, and her room was past mine, and I was always up late and everything. And because I had some health issues starting around that time. And in order to get to her room, he would have had to pass my room. And she claims, and I'm not denying victims or people, but she claims he did something and got him kicked out of the property because I was hanging out with him teaching him English. And I will say he was an attractive dude. He was 20. I was 14, whatever. Of course 14-year-old girls are like, "Oh, he's so cute." He was an attractive guy. He was Guatemalan. He was exotic. He was tan and handsome. I think honestly she was jealous that I was talking to him and me and him got along. And also, I got along better with my foster dad. I was an outside girl. I had a horse. I took care of the ducks and chickens and cows with him. I fixed fences. She and her mom were very much go tanning, hang out inside, like not get dirty kind of people. More like sit in the pool all day kind of people. They weren't very outdoorsy. And that I found was a problem with a lot of my homes is I'm an outside worker. I love working in the dirt. I love working with animals. Love working on the farms and ranches I lived at. But like their kids, like or their daughters, for some reason, every daughter would not be interested in doing that kind of stuff. They were always the homemaker or indoor, do this and this. And so I'd always have a connection with my foster dads because like they were the outside workers. The moms never really were, ever. I honestly like accept that second foster home I told you about with the goats and the chickens and the cows with Robin. The mom and dad were equals. But every other foster home after that, it was like they stuck me in these homes where the women were nothing like me. Like I had nothing in common with them. Like I like to bake, so I'd bake with them occasionally, but otherwise I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be in nature and in the dirt. And so I'd always request, like, now kids can request specific placements. I don't know if they still do that. When I was a kid, they would ask you, what kind of family do you want? And I'd always say, I want to be in the country on a ranch or a farm somewhere away from the city. Because I was raised more rural. And so they always, I will say they did that. They stuck me some cool places, like beautiful places. And like I said, the family started out great, but there was so much that would change after, because like after a certain amount of time, DHS kind of comes around a little less. You know, at first they come around more. Like, are you adjusting? Is the family good to you? Do they treat you good? And then slowly DHS, because they have so many kids in foster care, it kind of is like a once a month check in. You know, at first it's like multiple times a week they'd call and check in. And sorry about my dog reverse sneezing. But they check in multiple times a week. And then the longer it goes, it's like once a week. And then it's like, well, once every few weeks. And then once a month. And, you know, you'd have court occasionally. But for the most part, like, oh, if you're doing good, cool. We won't do anything. But, like, call us if you need something. Well, this is before cell phones. So, and they couldn't afford cell phones, or I couldn't access cell phones, or I couldn't even access a house phone. A lot of times I wasn't allowed to call. I didn't have the number. They had the number. And so I felt trapped. Like, I had no options. I felt nobody would believe me, you know. But any more questions?
The basics that I should probably... Is the foster care system perfect?
No. Foster care system needs a lot of legislative changes, a lot of internal investigations, a lot of more people speaking up and speaking out who've gone through it. The 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds who, as soon as age out of the foster care system, families can choose to kick them out with nothing. Like, they can choose and say, I bought all this stuff. You can take, like, a backpack. Or you can take nothing. Get out of my house. I've seen it happen. I've had friends it's happened to, where the foster parents, they aged out, and the foster parents like, all right, you're 18 and graduated. Bye. And it needs to change. There needs to be more regulation and more checking in, but there's not enough caseworkers to cover every kid. And then there are kids in foster care that don't need to be in foster care. I mean, there's a mix. There's kids who should be in foster care, ones that are, that shouldn't. I mean, it's a cluster.
Yeah.
It's a mess, and they have too much power. They overreach a lot, while they overreach a lot for situations that don't need them, while ignoring the kids who do. You've seen multiple cases of kids who've died, who've had DHS called multiple times on these parents for abuse, and they've died. The kid who was locked in that cupboard, that little boy,
yeah.
You know, but at the same time, there is systemic abuse in foster care. In the system, we are abused as much as we were abused in our regular homes, just in a different way. And I can tell you right now, I'm still dealing with my biological trauma, but even I still struggle greatly with my adoption trauma.
Yeah.
My adoption trauma is equal to the sexual abuse I went through as a child trauma. I mean, I'm not saying it's on the same, I'm not saying my sexual abuse is any less than or greater than. It's affected me mentally on the same level.
From an outsider's perspective, your adopted trauma has caused more long-lasting damage to you than your biological trauma.
Yeah.
Your adopted trauma has more or less made it. From talking, your adopted trauma has made it to where, and has led to you being in bad relationships.
Yeah.
And trying to please your partner in a bad relationship when they're gaslighting you and
Yeah.
they're psychologically abusive.
Mm-hmm. I have officially cut off, as of last year, my biological mom because of the continued gaslighting and blaming me for her life being the way it was. And my brother. My brother passed away. I'll discuss that in another video on why I think foster care also played into his early death at 38 years old. But I've also cut off my adopted parents, but they still, every once in a while, will send stuff like that letter we got for Christmas.
Yeah.
Where, oh, we want to make things better and I want to be a better person and I'm sorry. And then go no contact again. Like, it's such a narcissistic, gaslighting way to be. I try to cut you off. I try to not let you use my want of acceptance and love, was basically toward
Against
them.
You.
And they use it against me. That's what it feels like. Because have we heard anything? I wrote her a message back after we received that letter, and I came out and said everything. Like, I would love to have a relationship with you. I'd love for you to know the boys. I'd love for you to know my husband. It notified me on Facebook that they saw the message. She did. And no response back. And my birthday happens to be right after, around Christmas. So do two of my brothers. They got a Facebook post made about them for their birthdays. I did not. I have not been acknowledged. And as an adult, it's still nice to hear from your parents. Happy birthday, happy Mother's Day, anything. I have not spoken to my father in a few years, at least 7, 8.
I haven't known you to speak to him since we've been together.
Yeah, I don't think you've even talked to my dad, have you?
No.
So 7 years at least.
And almost.
And my mom my mom wears the pants. I'll say it right here publicly. She wears the pants. She runs the household. Always has. She was always the one to treat me different and to treat me wrong. My dad treated me with nothing but love until he just managed to suddenly cut contact with no explanation.
And we will get to that because...
And we'll get to that because...
I'd like to go in order, if we can, of your foster
homes. Yep, this is just kind of a summary of things we're going to be discussing more in detail.
Because there are more questions for that house alone.
And so this is just kind of a... Sorry about the long video, but this is kind of going through bits and pieces of trauma that we'll go into depth more of further in the series. And I do better with a question and answer format, so he will be asking questions and I'll answer as best as I can. And if anybody else has any questions that they have about my experiences or the videos, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe. Please share, subscribe, everything. Eventually we will be doing some lives when I get more people on the channel, more questions, so that way I can answer your questions and we can do more discussions. I hope to have on some people who've had experiences with me being in foster care, people who have questions, maybe people who maybe have been in foster care as well. So I will let you all know, and sorry for being a week late on delivering this video to y'all. My youngest son was sick. That's also why I look exhausted. I'm still catching up on sleep from a week of virtually no sleep. So, love y'all. I hope your week goes good. And our next video should be posted next Saturday. We'll start filming on Fridays and get these out to you guys on Saturday. So, talk to y'all later.